Director, Center for Reparation Research, and Interim Director, Indigenous and Maroon Studies Institute, and former Director of ICS, and also the lecturer for the 6th Annual Stuart Hall Lecture. Dr. Dave Goss, Senior Lecturer and Director, the Institute of Caribbean Studies. Mr. Joseph Pereira, former Director, the Institute of Caribbean Studies. I want to acknowledge also in a very special way other past directors of the ICS who are with us here and online. I also want to acknowledge other lecturers of the University of the West Indies and heads of department, including the former Dean, Professor Sylvia Cohenberg, Professor Paulette Ramsey, Professor Carmel Roof. I'd like to acknowledge the students and graduates of the Institute of Caribbean Studies, and the members of the wider public and all those with us here and online. Please be very welcome to the 6th Annual Stuart Hall Lecture and the 39th anniversary edition of the ICS anniversary celebrations. Could you put your hands together for the ICS? The Institute of Caribbean Studies is a very important place in the entire Caribbean and in the global world of cultural studies. And if there was a time when cultural studies was needed in the world, it is now. We also, in a very special way, are honored to be able to again celebrate the great Jamaican luminary and sociologist, cultural theorist, and political activist, Stuart Hall, through this lecture. He is widely regarded as a founding father of cultural studies, and he is often called the godfather of multiculturalism. He significantly expanded the scope of academic study to include popular culture, race, and gender, treating them as serious sites of power and political struggle. He was born in Kingston and went to JC. Any JC people in the house? You usually have them. Yes, I see you, Sir Barnett, Dr. Barnett. And the work of Stuart Hall, I must let you know, if you Google Stuart Hall, he appears more than Karl Marx. So he is a significant academic in the world, and we need more and more to reclaim him in Jamaica, putting a little bit on my agenda in the mix. But I am not the one who is really to welcome you, because the ICS has a daddy. And the name of the father of the ICS in this season is Dr. Dave Goss. Please put your hands together for him as he comes to welcome us.
This is Daddy Goss. Anyway, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to give the welcome to this very important event in the life of the ICS RSU. So a pleasant good evening to everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 6th Annual Stuart Hall Distinguished Lecture, hosted by the Institute of Caribbean Studies and the Reggae Studies Unit. And I better say Reggae Studies Unit, because I'm not sure if Professor Emerita Cooper is listening, so I have to say, and the Reggae Studies Unit. All right. There are two very important reasons for our gathering here this evening. First, we have to recognize this great cultural studies icon, Stuart Hall, this former head boy at Jamaica College, who made a significant impact on global history and culture. In 1951, when Hall left Jamaica and arrived in London on a Rhodes Scholarship to study English language at Oxford University, it could not have entered his mind that 13 years later, in 1964, he would be one of the founding fathers of the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies. Second important reason why we are here this evening, that the ICS is celebrating our 39th birthday, as the ICS was born as an academic institution, yes, on May 7th, 1987. When it was established, it had these following objectives. I'm going to keep them as So we have trained 333 students overall in 6 different programs. Yeah? And the breakdown is as follows. 229 ESEM students. And ESEM is our flagship program, by the way, from the time we started. ESEM was the degree then. So we have trained at the undergraduate level 229 for ESEM, 22 for Caribbean and cultural industries, 10 for music and performance studies, and the latter 2 are newer programs. But at the graduate level now, we have trained 31 MA students, 16 MPhil students, and guess what? 25 PhD students. Yeah? And I think I'm going to say 26 because Deban got his letter today from the library, so he'll be 26. Yeah. So we have done well, but we face challenges, colleagues, serious challenges. And these are challenges that we are trying to address. We were at a retreat from the last 3 days, trying to work through some of these thorny issues. And we're still working them through. But we have a lot of work to do, but we are glad that we have a history that we can rely on as we look forward to the future. So we could not have ended the academic year and not have a serious reflection on Stuart Hall. Given what is happening in our world today, the prevalence of neoliberalism and conservative right-wing racism from our neighbors up north and in the west, the voice of Stuart Hall needs to be reheard. It is our pleasure, therefore, then, to have as our lecturer this evening one of the latest minted professors, the indomitable cultural doctor, Professor Sonia Stanley-Nair, as our lecturer, as she engages on the topic, engaging itself from mental enslavement. In the 1960s and 70s, the idea of serious academic interrogation into studying popular culture ideas was unpopular then, but Hall's interest and emphasis in the study of culture concerning the lived experiences, the interpretation, meanings of those experiences, and the information which we need to work through, especially in the new context that we have. In the era of Margaret Thatcher, who was one of the proponents of the rise of neoliberalism, Hall, in his critique, coined the term authoritarian populism to describe this shift, arguing that Thatcherism successfully combined free market neoliberalism with a strong coercive state to win popular consent. Isn't that comment the same comment we can make of Trump in North America and personally Boris Johnson in the United Kingdom? So, having said all of that, let me take the opportunity to welcome all of us to this interesting, important lecture, those who are face-to-face and those who are online. And some names were called earlier. I want to recognize all our heroes, academic heroes. We have Professor Paulette Ramsey in the audience. We have also Mr. Pereira, who was one of our heads. We have Professor Sonia Nair, Professor Carmel Roof as professors. We have some of our students who are here. We want to welcome you all. And also, we have a visiting student. Let me backtrack. She's now an independent scholar, but she got her PhD from the University of Leicester. Dr. Akila Maxwell. Welcome, Akila. Akila will be spending some time with us in the ICS, so we'll hear more of her work. Then also, I can't forget our former dean, Professor Sylvia Cohenberg. Sylvia, thank you for coming, Sylvia. And we have our friend, colleague, Dr. Michael Barnett and others. I want to welcome you all. Students, everyone, welcome you all. And we do wish for a very good evening as we reflect on this important topic that Dr. Professor Stanley-Nair will engage us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goss, for that wonderful welcome. I know we can now stretch out our foot and drink with lemonade, and yes, we are at home. And the ICS is that kind of department, I must let you know. It's always home. You always feel a welcome, and I so want to welcome everyone again who is here and who is online. But, you know, I call Dr. Goss, if I call Dr. Goss the father of the ICS, what do I call Mr. Joe Pereira? He is he is a delivering doctor at the birth, and then the first pooper. Please put your hands together for Mr. Joseph Pereira, the founding director of the Institute of Caribbean, the inaugural pooper. That is it, Professor Stanley.
I don't know if any paternity test would prove him right.
You are the father.
But I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you in this 39th birthday and celebration, and also this massive lecture that we're about to hear from Sonia, celebrating Stuart Hall. As you know, Stuart Hall, as one of us Caribbean people, could be regarded as the originator of cultural studies, and we're proud of that. Now, this here is where it started, right? 39 years ago, those of us in the faculty in the different formal departments felt, look, there's a gap. We're not studying Jamaica. We're not studying the Caribbean. Yeah, the historians have done some history. And yes, there's some literatures in English. After 1965, they struggled to get one course on West Indian literature because the West Indies didn't have any literature. So finally, that came through. But we didn't have much. And so Spanish did its Spanish, French did its French, history did its history, linguistics came along a bit late in the day and they did their linguistics. But we were not really engaging with our society and its culture. So some of us put on a series of talks. Michael Dash spoke, Hubert Devonish, Maureen Warner-Lewis and her orature. And gradually we were saying, look, we need to institutionalize this. So we boldly proclaimed ourselves the Institute of Caribbean Studies. And we had no funds. And then when I became dean, I released funds. So the advantage of being an administrative leader. And this is how we began, just talking among ourselves. And people would come to listen and share in the discussion. So that is the way, because if you wait for things to put in place, I suppose in other universities, but certainly in UWI, you'll never get anywhere. So we just jumped in and did what we had to do. And then we got a lectureship post in Caribbean Studies. But there was that glorious year, was it 1999, when we jumped in deep and said we're going to put on a degree in cultural studies and we would have a postgraduate program. And we encouraged, I think it was 8, of which I see 2 present, Kamau and Sonia, as the first students in cultural studies PhD program. And they will tell you that I knew nothing about cultural studies, but I was bold enough to say that I was going to be the coordinator of the degree program. And so we had a reading program started off, and we read and we came and discussed. So I was basically a student with the others, although I wasn't registered. So that's how we moved, and we institutionalized. And from one lecture, we moved to others. And from looking at what I'd call certain aspects of culture, we moved and broadened into reggae studies, thanks to Professor Cooper. And we moved into Rastafari studies, thanks basically to Jalani, because in a way, our approach was to let people run with things and expand where we could. So I'm proud of the development of the Institute over the years. You have done marvelously, and I congratulate the impressive list of graduates that we have put out. And I join you all in celebrating, and I look forward to Sonia's lecture. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pupa Joe. Is a good DJ name that you know, Pupa Joe. But thank you, and thank you for the work you did to lay the framework and groundwork for the ICS. Please, once more for Mr. Joseph Pereira. Now, recently when the late, great Jesse Jackson had his funeral, well, they had his funeral, he didn't have it, he went on. But there was a feature that I'm going to adopt this afternoon, if you don't mind, Sharp. We have some reflections coming. But during the funeral, there was always an elder of the church who stood nearby, ready to tug on the coattails of anyone who was going too long. This is not a funeral. You will get chance, especially next year when we are 40, to say much more about the ICS. But we have some students around whom the ICS is built. The ICS is student-centered like nowhere else. And we want to hear from the students of the ICS. So I'm going to invite Mr. Robert Hall, an MPhil Cultural Studies candidate, to come and share his reflections. Put your hands together for him as he comes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thankfully, nobody has coins nowadays, and a pair card them up, so there'll be no penny concert and $10 to take me down and I kind of suck there, right? Professors, Dr. Gus, head of department, former heads of departments, to which I am very thankful that I'm able to stand here in the space that you've created. Distinguished guests, students, and colleagues, good evening. I absolutely relish the opportunity to share my experience and give a testimonial to this department, which I've really grown to love, and I really, really love it. Trust me. I came into the ICS as it was one of the most accessible options to facilitate some kind of career development, coming it kind of in a little bit of a dire position. Honestly, after trying to find scholarships and train in big foreign so that I could return and be on profile and morning time, you know, to declare that I have supposedly gone abroad and participated in some other better society to care about that rarefied air to develop Jamaica or something of the sort, right? Dreams that you carry and walk with after high school where you're not really set to nobody but technically that you're dealing with. So you are absolutely right to deduce that cultural studies at UMona wasn't quite. It was a late discovery and really a last resort, and honestly did not look attractive at all to somebody who had actually been trained in visual arts and textiles and had this dream to become this big-time fashion designer, walk up and down runway and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to, do a fabulous master's somewhere and study in big foreign and finish with a final fashion collection of clothes to mad out the people them. Allow me to bask in the glow thereafter of adulating fans and come and say, oh my God, Robert, you did so well, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, registered for the course, and I was in for a very, very rude, but positive, but rude awakening. Slightly intimidated, as of course I did design. Mark, me never done. You understand? Me did do A-levels and things still, but I was slightly intimidated because I was never in a UA environment before and the heavy academia. Indeed, and at ICS I was baptized properly into culture via the rigorous exposure to a theoretical framework or a series of different ones by lecturers who were often at the forefront, most often at the forefront of their field, and the people who actually write the books and them kind of something, right? I was heavily impacted. Quietly at first, and then louder resonations gave way to significant realizations, and today I'm just going to share 4 of those because it's a long list. First of all, after a couple months in the program, I realized that I now had language and concepts to understand and explain a lot of my Jamaican society, this space that I actually lived in. Didn't realize it, one of them just get up and realize, like, oh my God, this is what is going on. Ideas were now very clear, situations could be read as hard concepts, and one could see how and why we actually got here as a people, why we're struggling with certain things as a nation, as a Caribbean, and in our relationships with the wider world. And even though it was all of that, and it sounds very theoretical, also it's cultural studies, so it was never highty-tighty. And it would be very interesting how I'd be at work talking about a project and I just find myself easily just segueing into some theory and that kind of thing, but obviously not declaring that it is theory X or it's Marxism this or that kind of thing, right? That was one. Two, I know how that full toolbox to workshop ideas and to innovate properly. I could now effectively problematize ideas, turn them into research, conclude and locate solutions. And yet in so doing, I did not have to present it as academic, research or one big 5,000 word essays, of course, that I still to this day kind of not really relish. Cultural studies absolutely is about the everyday. Thirdly, there was the ability of the discipline to widen its universe and evolve into more fulsome and complete inclusive explanations, inclusive, malleable, collaborative with other disciplines to actually solve and locate problems. And fourthly, as they talk about ISIS being a family, I've located a tribe of individuals, and what I love about them, they are from all kind of various spaces, from all different. We are not the same. One department, people that you hang with, and we're not doing the same things, right? But the very interesting is that culture really becomes the axis that really connects us, and we are dealing with the same, we're talking about the same problem, but we're applying it in different spaces in different ways. Really diverse. This program is absolute gold. I would urge and encourage anybody, any Jamaican, any Caribbean. I really realized after a while how important studying cultural studies in the Caribbean to really deal with our issues and really be able to understand ourselves. How important just doing cultural studies here is. It has and it continues to be an absolutely exciting, pathway enlightening, life transforming experience. I totally want to pay tribute to each and every leader, from initially Mr. Pereira to every single leader, because the space that we work in now is a space that has been opened up and expanded by each and every phase of the leader and their team. And I'm deeply, deeply, deeply grateful. If you're thinking about doing cultural studies, you need to come do it.
Thank you so much, Robert, for your reflection. Now I'm going to tell you all something. This church have a preacher, and the preacher have to go up by 7 o'clock. Look at your clocks. Yes, I'm actually doing it, yes. Great work, Robert. We have 3 more persons to speak. Work it out. We have an introduction, and the introduction is not going to be short because it is Professor Stanley Nair. So I want you to work it out. All the rest of the people who are going to come talk, you learned that in name Pracy in school, Pracy. Them not teach them things there again. Okay. But you're going to find a way to work it out and reflect within the little time we have left, because we want to get to the main event. But thank you so much, Robert. And we are now going to hear from Melissa Beckford, an MPhil candidate in the ICS. Put your hands together for her.
I do have a skirt tail. Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I am on the program, the official one that Hugh has, just not yours. I am incidentally the same age as ICS and will always be. So I'm recognizing that and I'm honoring that. I came into ICS not as a graduate student. I was telling a story outside. I buck up on ICS when I was looking for interesting courses to do, and I did history. And I came across this Bongo Naya man, and somebody tell me, say, I'm interesting. And I said, okay, let me choose that course. And I went. And yes, indeed, it was interesting. I went back and did another course. But I have a first class honors in history. And in my final year, I buck up Sonia Stanley Nair. And I had never done anything as academic as I did in discourses in cultural studies. And I remember it very well because she wasn't just this very academic person. I was pregnant at the time, and she was also just very human with me. And I appreciated that. And I've not left ICS since then. When I decided to do graduate work, I just knew that I would be coming back. And I was also moved by her story when she always says, I've heard her say it many times, fully homegrown. And yes, I'm also embracing being fully homegrown. So I am at home at ICS. There are some persons who have met, recently. And I absolutely love it. So I'm becoming known as the block roading lady, a lady who blocks the road. And I hope to finish my own work in a very short period from now. But I am enjoying the time. I have met, as Robert has, a tribe as well, a group of people who I'm working with. And I have also been able to tell other persons about the work that ICS is doing and that they should come, right? So I'm proselytizing as well, right? And it's working well, and other people are coming. And I'm glad to see where we are, and I'm committed to ICS and going forward. The bottom line is that it is truly awesome to be doing academic work within this department, and I am committed to seeing it growing. So, happy birthday, ICS, and I'm looking forward to the lecture, Prof.
Thank you, Melissa, for your reflections. And now we're going to invite Ms. Tonya Brown, a PhD Cultural Studies candidate, to give her reflections. Put your hands together for Tonya. Come on, you can clap her better than that, man.
Good, okay. A bit short. Yeah, it's fine, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Tonya Brown. It's not Tanya, or it's Tonya Brown. And I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Caribbean Studies. I'm here today initially to big up my department because it deserves it. And not just for its academic excellence it exudes, but for the way it actually supports its students. Entering the program as a departmental awardee, that set the tone for everything that followed, An award at the point of entry is more than financial support. It signals that the department sees value in your work before you've had the chance to prove it. And for someone coming in with a research focus on, in an area that is as niche as mine, exploring chapel culture in Jamaica, that early investment meant everything. And it gave me the confidence to commit fully, and the grounding to push towards, push through when things get challenging. And my development as a scholar has also, been shaped in real practical ways to my role as a graduate teaching assistant, being in the classroom while simultaneously working on my research, has made me a sharper thinker and more committed educator. And teaching isn't separate from my intellectual formation. It's been central to it. And I'm grateful this department understood that balance and gave me the opportunity to develop as an individual and as a scholar. But however, beyond the opportunities, it's the people, that the staff who show up, who answer your questions and, make the day manageable. That kind of support is what keeps students keep coming back and wanting to push through. So I want to give a special shout out to the department's director, Dr. Dave Goss. Your leadership sets the tone for all of it. And and to my supervisor, Professor Donna P. Hope, whose encouragement and belief in my work is the reason I am where I am today and continue to push towards. I'm still writing, still becoming, but I am doing so with the foundation that this department helped build. And I want to thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Goss. Thank you, Professor Stanley, for your teachings, your lessons in the classroom. And yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Tonia, for your reflections. We're going to hear from, am I allowed to call him Mr. still, or is it another name? Devon Panton. We'll hear from him later on in the program, so don't think I'm skipping him. But right now, we're going to have some entertainment, and the ICS always has very talented members. This next presenter is going to be giving us a taste of the kind of talent that made her the winner of the Best Talent category for the JCDC Miss Kingston and St. Andrew Festival Queen Competition 2025. Put your hands together for Miss Janelle Jones.
Good evening, everyone. Can I tell you a joke? You see, when I saw Dr. Naya on the flyer, all that festival queen, something go out the door, okay? So I'm a nervous wreck right now. Okay. Na 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 na. Listen, the blood of African kings run in my vein. Here in a Jamaica, rebellious offsprings. We've got a warrior spirit inside. It will while it can't tame. And this a warrior spirit inside. It come for break every shackle and chain. Me a Shaka Zulu, Pygmy, and Nkrumah, Pygmy, Naya Bingi, Pygmy. Just like Martin and Marcus and Malcolm, I'm fiery and Nkrumah, Pygmy, Fela Kuti, Pygmy, Kunta Kinte, Pygmy. Just like Marley and Garvey, I'm fiery. Look how many years them whip we. Dash with the whip, I want microchip we. And dirty Babylon style no fit we. Battle it out, come make we get to the victory. Hey, them fight with brother and sister. And when we are dance, them say we're moving sinister. When all we do is just love we culture and beat the drums and we are chase the vultures away. Me a Shaka Zulu, Pygmy, and Nkrumah, Pygmy, Naya Bingi, Pygmy. Just like Marcus and Martin and Malcolm, I'm fiery and Nkrumah, Pygmy, Naya Bingi, Pygmy, Kunta Kinte, Pygmy. Just like Marcus and Marley, I'm fiery. The thoughts of freedom fighters dwell in my brain. Stolen from Africa, the mission is still the same. We've got a warrior spirit inside. It will while it can't tame. And this a warrior spirit inside. It come for break every shackle and chain. And them a try brainwash we. Poison my mind with meditation dirty. Them never tell we say black is beauty. Me nah go bleach, me say me nah dilute it. Hey, a youth search your history. Break the puzzle, come make we solve the mystery. Hey, a Solomonic dynasty from the line of David. What a priceless legacy. Me a Shaka Zulu, Pygmy, Paul Bogle, Pygmy, Sam Sharp, Picnic, just like Martin and Marcus and Martin and Fiery and Kruma. Picnic, Fela Kute. Picnic, Kunta Kinte. Picnic, just like Garvey and Marley and Fiery.
Wow, come on, you have to give it up again for her. Wow, if I saw your sound when you're nervous. No, sir. You hear that voice? That's like an ancestral voice calling from way back when. And what a way to set the stage for our lecture this evening from our wonderful child, Picnic of the ICS, Professor Sonia Stanley Nair. And so I'm going to get out of the way because you're going to hear now the introduction of our speaker from Mr. Kamau Amen, an assistant lecturer in the ICS. And the next voice you will hear after that is our lecturer. Put your hands together for Mr. Kamau Amen.
Okay, greetings all. So, mine is the task to introduce or maybe reintroduce you to Professor Stanley Nair. Sonia Stanley Nair is a Jamaican scholar, international speaker, and professor of cultural studies at the University of the West Indies, where she has held roles such as director, Institute of Caribbean Studies and Reggae Studies Unit, and Deputy Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Education. She is a leading author, teacher, and researcher on Black Atlantic performance geographies, popular culture and the sacred, and Caribbean cultural studies more broadly. She is the author and editor of numerous publications, among them the acclaimed Dance Hall From Slave Ship to Ghetto, and Dance Hall, a reader on Jamaican music and culture. A nationalist and regionalist at heart, she's involved in efforts to promote development specifically and cultural and creative industries through her past work in the Ministry of Culture's Entertainment Advisory Board, the Culture Committee of the Jamaica National Commission for UNESCO, Jamaica's Reggae Industry Association, Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and as Assistant Chief Examiner for the Caribbean Examinations Council Advanced Proficiency Exams in Caribbean Studies, JAMPRO, as well as the Museums Division of the Institute of Jamaica and Monitoring and Content Committee of the Broadcasting Commission, Jamaica. Her research and opinions have appeared in various local and international media, including The Guardian, BBC, The Washington Post, Netflix, NPR, Vice TV, Caribbean Beat, The Fader, Refinery 29, Rotterdam TV, and Pop Matters. As a pioneer in her field, she introduced the Sound Culture book series at the UA Press in 2019, which is dedicated to publishing original work on Caribbean music. And in 2025, she initiated the Caribbean Journal of Music and Sound Culture's Journal at Intellectual Books in the capacity of editor. Professor Stanley Nair currently serves as Director, Center for Reparations Research, and Interim Director, Indigenous and Maroon Studies Institute, UWI, and holds international appointments as member of the International Scientific Committee of the Roots of Enslaved Peoples Project, UNESCO, and Senior Research Associate Honorary at the Rhodes University, South Africa. Her overarching motto for life is embodied in the phrase, empowering encounters and enabling environments. Friends all, please help me welcome Professor Stanley Nair.
Greetings, everyone. It is always wonderful to be among family. When you're I always like to say, when you're in a lecture room, I kind of know everybody personally. Of reducing what I would want to say this evening into, however number of minutes is the difficult part. So let's begin. I kind of don't know how to do this now because I need to see what I'm reading here, and I need to. That's probably a better idea. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So it is wonderful to be a child of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. There is, and I can say this without any fear of, reprisal or bad mind. There is no other department that I would have wanted to be studying in. In fact, when I tried to do graduate work and I had decided what I wanted to do now, I was in a master's program in the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work at the time. I was privileged enough, like Tonia, to get a departmental award, a sign that a department really is trusting in the fruits you will bear academically. I went to the head of department at the time, John Maxwell, and said, I've decided what I want to study. And he said, there's nobody here to supervise you. And I don't remember now how I heard about cultural studies, but I knew at the time, having an interest in the study of, I wanted to compare at the time the dance of the dance hall, dance of Kumina, and the dance of revivalism. He said, there's nobody here in sociology to supervise you. I heard about cultural studies and I went to meet with Mr. Pereira, and so I signed up as one of those persons in the very first cohort. And Kamau is the very first student to have completed a program at the graduate level, but I still am very happy that I was the very first to complete the PhD. Yes. In the entire UWI, because cultural studies is now at all of the campuses. Now, as someone in my own role now, dual and triple roles that I play, it's very important that we acknowledge at the UWI Mona campus, we recognize and declare that the land on which we operate as an institution of higher learning is the original or traditional territory of many peoples. The UWI acknowledges the First Nation, comprising the indigenous people who were displaced by the Columbus Project and general European colonization, and the hundreds of Africans who toiled for more than 100 years as enslaved people on the old Papine sugar estate. The UWI recognizes their labor and sacrifice on this land, which has enabled the establishment of a university that now provides educational opportunities for many of their descendants, which they themselves were denied. And is education we there about? Yes. As we celebrate the ICS's birth as a space for dialogue on Caribbean culture, history, and politics, and as we honor our founding fathers and mothers, those who have been there through conceptualization, for leadership or support, I wish to identify my main interlocutors for this talk on emancipating the self from mental slavery. In the bodies, the embodiment, then and now, Frederick Hickling, Franz Fanon, and Sylvia Winter as my main interlocutors. It is timely that conversations highlighting emancipatory politics align with prevailing conversations inside both the Institute of Caribbean Studies and the Center for Reparation Research, where I now serve. I am happy to be associated with these two entities. I have been clear about my own mission as an academic, and it is cultural studies as a disciplinary home that has provided this clarity. I would love to repeat that 10 different times, in 10 different ways, but it is cultural studies as my disciplinary home that has given me that clarity. The first point of clarity to note is that of context. Indeed, our location is the Caribbean, and that location in context, a context for which we must always contextualize challenges and their solutions alongside our dreams and aspirations, context enough to guide our conceptualization of the indigenous archives rooted in culture, how, when, where, for what reasons, and for whom we explore or even reveal them. Some things we have to guard carefully. I am a child of the Caribbean, the Black Atlantic, Jamaica specifically, but in this location, embodying a cosmopolitanism akin to that defined by Huon Wardle, just as my ancestors, your ancestors, did over the last millennium in particular. Therefore, today I begin with locating us in Frederick Hickling's terms through a psychohistoriographic analysis of this context in which we are located, in which I am located. This was motivated by encounters each day that tell us we are living in times when people still feel the legacies of enslavement and colonialism as real consequences. I begin by sharing a social media post as well as poignant songs for the times. And I don't know which computer I'm going to share these songs on, but I'm going to sing them. From the platform X, at MelVV145 wrote in response to @whos_that_chick on May 4, 2026, and I quote, "One of the most frustrating aspects about racism in the Caribbean, it's the constant denial of it, because people push the idea that it can't exist if we're all mixed." And I want to just enter into a conversation here through Freddie Hickling's own conception of psychohistoriography, which I now teach in a course called Psychohistoriography, Health and Reparatory Justice. In the Reparatory Justice Masters, we have a University of the West Indies alongside University of Glasgow in the Centre for Contemporary, in the Glasgow Caribbean Centre for Contemporary Development. And I really, get pleasure from teaching that course because it allows me to share with students this very mission that I have become clear about. So the Caribbean condition may be understood not merely as an economic or political crisis, but as a profound crisis of historical consciousness, identity, embodiment, and social being. Across the region, and particularly in Jamaica, various forms of unwellness manifest themselves through chronic disease and poor nutrition, violence and expanding prison populations, spiritual fragmentation, linguistic alienation, cultural denigration, psychological trauma, social distrust, and in fact, hyper-individualism. Imagine, forgetting the community, the village. These conditions are neither accidental nor reducible to individual moral failure. Rather, they are deeply rooted in the historical violence of slavery, enslavement, colonialism, plantation, capitalism, and post-colonial dependency. The work of Frederick Hickling, the work of Frantz Fanon, of Sylvia Wynter, they offer us a powerful framework for understanding how this unwellness becomes visible in the ordinary voice of the people, especially through reggae, dancehall, oral culture, and performance traditions. Music and performance become archives of collective psychic life, spaces where trauma, resistance, contradiction, despair, healing, and historical memory are publicly narrated. But I will come to this more so in a minute. What is this psychohistoriographic space that I wish us to occupy for the time we are together this evening? Hickling's theory of psychohistoriography argues that Caribbean societies suffer from forms of collective psychological distortion produced by slavery and colonial domination. According to Hickling, Enslavement created a historical psychological injury. Colonialism normalized racial hierarchy and self-alienation. Post-colonial societies have inherited unresolved trauma. This trauma appears socially through violence, color class antagonism, internalized inferiority, social fragmentation, authoritarianism, so power structures that are just there for power's sake, not interested in people. Cultural insecurity. Hickling's concept, for example, of the roast breadfruit psychosis describes a condition in which formerly colonized people reject indigenous value systems while aspiring toward colonial norms that remain unattainable. But there's a larger argument which is missed when Hickling's psychosis analysis is raised. And that is that of it is of the primary and secondary delusions. That is, the first diagnosis of madness has to be placed at the feet of the colonizers who declared on seeing the so-called New World that they were the owners of it all. In Sylvia Wynter's bid to have us reconceptualize modernity, the Pope must have been drunk and the King of Castile a madman. With these layers as a backdrop, the psychoses, the social pathologies, and intergenerational or epigenetic traumas, these present with us, living with us in our blood, but totally viable in the cries for justice at several levels, visible in the cries for justice at several levels. With these layers as a backdrop then, music can be understood as collective diagnostic speech. We know reggae and dancehall and other musical genres of the African diaspora function as forms of psychosocial testimony. I talk about the music as a space to hear news. It's a way to test the temperature of the society. It's a way to diagnose and to understand. In fact, Nicole Plummer and myself are very proud of the work that we've been doing, for example, with an analysis of dancehall and reggae lyrics to map the society, the social concerns around gender-based violence. So the music can tell us so much about rage, spiritual confusion, political distrust, bodily suffering, economic disenfranchisement, and so on. And I really wanted to start, I wish this computer was on, I don't know why, but, and I don't think mine is connected to a sound device, but just imagine Sizzler's Dem a Gaze in your mind now, right? Artists such as Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Burning Spear, Queen Ifrica, Sizzler, among others, have repeatedly narrated mental captivity, police violence, poverty, spiritual exile, historical disinheritance. Reggae's recurring emphasis on Babylon, on oppression, on captivity, suffering, they reflect what Hickling would identify as a population attempting to narrate the psychic consequences of colonial modernity. Music becomes communal therapy, historical memory, diagnostic, and even cathartic speech. I could also use the work of Frantz Fanon, arguing that colonialism produces profound psychological disorders because it recognizes humanity according to racial hierarchy. And we know the books, Black Skin, White Mask, The Wretched of the Earth, and so on. He also pointed us to linguistic alienation, which is very, very important. In fact, it is in my later years now that I'm understanding, you know, when you dream, the language you dream in says a lot about what is in your subconscious. So, for example, have you ever dreamt in a foreign language? Do you dream in Jamaican? Do you dream, when in your dreams, are you speaking standard English? Those things matter because they say a lot about your subconscious, your levels of comfort, and your levels of vulnerability. So, I go now to Sylvia Wynter. Wynter argued that Western modernity imposed a narrow definition of the human based on whiteness, rationality, capitalism, and so on. European bourgeoisie norms, what she calls man. became dominant through colonialism. Caribbean people were positioned outside this category and therefore constructed as lesser humans, primitive, irrational, excessive, embodied rather than intellectual. This epistemological violence continues to shape Caribbean societies today. But how do we address this? What are the paths to decolonization? Winter helps explain why African-derived cultural practices remain stigmatized. In many Caribbean societies, African spiritual traditions are demonized. European Christianity is privileged. Black expressive culture is criminalized. Thus, societies experience spiritual contradiction. African retentions survive culturally, yet are publicly disavowed institutionally. This contradiction produces forms of psychic fragmentation. Can you imagine, there is a term for this which is not coming to me now, but can you imagine your mind living in contradiction, but your body wanting to be free? And therefore, just an activity like listening to music will show up the dissonance in that body, which I'm going to say a little bit more about, because the body will respond to rhythm where the mind cannot fully comprehend or intervene. The mind cannot intervene. Where do I go from here? So, on wellness, in the ordinary voice, indeed, the ordinary voice, thank you, Tricia, for reminding me, the ordinary voice of Caribbean people, the speech, the music, the proverbs, the humor, the rituals, the performances of everyday life these are all containing evidence of historical trauma. It appears in recurring themes within reggae and dancehall, for example, violence, lyrics about murder, about distrust, about survival, lyrics about hypermasculinity, compensatory assertions of power, consumption, aspiration toward wealth and deprivation, amid deprivation, spiritual conflict. Who is doing that? You're trying to play something? What is that? Oh, you're trying to skip the ad? Music after play. After play. Blood Money is the first one we're going to play? Not Sizzlers, them again? Yes, right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How many of you know that I can dance? All right. Pause. Yes, we might want to keep the music on and no more talking. We have to stop it. All right, so in the music, there are multiple themes that we can identify with. Bodily distress, migration, there's linguistic assertion, defense of Creole language or languages, Creole speech, resistance, calls for liberation and dignity. And in essence, when we put together the corpus of what with is speech, music, proverbs, humor, rituals, and so on, there is one theme that comes back to us each time, and that is performance. Performance as a social text. Performance traditions range from dance hall to carnival, dub poetry, revival, ceremonies, kumina, sound system culture, and so on. And they communicate in very profound ways collective anxiety, this historical memory, bodily resistance, and certainly alternative futures. There is also the question of the public health and the colonial afterlives. The region's crises around obesity, hypertension, diabetes, mental health, prison expansion, and violence, these are real. The plantation economy normalized poor nutrition, exploitative labor, chronic disease, chronic stress. And in fact, the contemporary unwellness reflects these colonial afterlives embodied across generations. It is concerning that approximately 70% of our populations in the Caribbean are in fact vulnerable to non-communicable diseases, these chronic non-communicable diseases. So music is both the symptom and a healing practice for us. And I want to acknowledge this in the whole context of how it is music is used. And I'm going to come back to this context of the body. But the emancipatory politics of cultural studies is what I want to center our attention on. The emergence of cultural studies in post-war Britain presented a radical intellectual intervention into questions of power, identity, class, race, media, and everyday life. The field is closely associated with the work of Richard Hogarth, Raymond Williams, and Stuart Hall, whose work collectively transformed understandings of culture from a narrow concern with elite artistic production into a broader examination of lived experience, ideology, and social struggle. For post-colonial societies such as Jamaica and the wider Commonwealth Caribbean, cultural studies possesses a deeply emancipatory function. Oh, I think I'm gone too far now. Yes. No. Yes. Not sure why that's moving. Not sure. For post-colonial, yes, deeply emancipatory function. It offers tools for interrogating colonial legacies, confronting racial capitalism, validating subaltern knowledge systems, and advancing, most importantly, reparatory justice. In this context, cultural studies is not merely an academic discipline. It becomes a political and ethical project concerned with liberation, historical redress, and cultural sovereignty. And I'm speaking to you, students, because I want you to understand that there's a mission when you are a part of a discipline that has an activist goal. My confession this evening is that the paper I wanted to present is not the one I'm presenting. But sometimes as writers, we go with the flow and seize the moments we have. I, however, reference that paper by taking from it a sort of footnote on the emancipatory power of protest. Years ago, I was moved to deeper examination of Stuart Hall's work as I considered the global declarations around protest. For example, Time magazine declared 2013 the year of the protester. How many of us remember that? Me alone pay attention to these things? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How old were you in 2013? Anyway, so the year of the so it was a ripe moment to consider the age of the protester and changing modes of governmentality in Jamaica and beyond. And I started thinking about this thing. When Time magazine declared 2013 the year of the protester, it was inadvertently signaling the maturity and efficacy, as well as the resurgence of various forms of protest, especially mass protest. In that year, we saw Egypt erupt. And in visual representation, the Saturn ad later pulled had featured the visual burning of a Jamaican flag, which went viral and sparked global protests. Essentially, war was declared on those who would burn the flag of such a beloved country. Persons declared love for Jamaica, and streets were featured alongside images of world leaders, war tankers, blacks and whites alike, and Rastas. I used the events of 2013, and of course later, as we witnessed the Occupy movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so on, to make statements about changing modes of governmentality and protests which have been ignited by youth action in multiple endeavors, from nation building and climate change to Afrofuturism, sexual rights, and freedom of expression. In many of these instances, there's an underlying text of music playing a central direct or indirect role, a signifier in the process of mobilization. While it is not a central focus of this presentation, it constitutes an occasion for thinking about protest in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in the Black Atlantic, Jamaica's direct and indirect involvement in protests using those of 1865, the Morant Bay Christmas Rebellion, as a point of departure leading into the Brixton riots, the London riots, the LA riots, the Tambourine Army, Black Lives Matter, and so on I mentioned earlier, among others. These are highlighted as spaces for dialogue about forms of protest. A nation which has inspired Jamaica, that nation which has inspired various forms of rebellion, including the fights against apartheid and nuclear armament or nuclear wars. Music is as text in the Jamaican context, an influential, especially the sound system, a key departure in terms of the engagement around protest. As we consider the emancipatory politics of cultural studies, protest becomes an anchor for people of this region who have often been invisible, except, and my block roading friend over there will understand, who have often been invisible except for enslavement, quote unquote enslavement, before protest action ensues. I'm engaging from this context, therefore, via a cultural studies that is born in activism around cultures and politics of protest. Indeed, Bob Marley's Crazy Baldheads came around the same time as Michel Foucault considered matters of governmentality and the relationship to powers of institution to discipline and punish, the prisons, the schools, hospitals, cutting off the locks from Rastas admitted in hospitals, etc., etc., etc. Now, when we consider the founding fathers of cultural studies, this very cultural studies which gives us, certainly, validates protests as action for social transformation, Richard Hogarth and Raymond Williams, I want to just, in the interest of time, summarize Richard Hogarth's work, Culture and Working Life, Working Class Life as a focus. This insight is especially important in the Caribbean, where colonialism historically dismissed this kind of working class life and culture. Certainly you can think about Kumina, revivalism, Rastafari, dancehall, carnival traditions, is all emerging in some way as this everyday life, even from people who we would consider below working class, the ordinary poor of these countries. Cultural studies provides a framework for recognizing formally marginalized Caribbean cultural forms as legitimate intellectual and political expressions. Raymond Williams, of course, gave us Culture is Ordinary, fundamentally redefining culture by arguing that it is ordinary. Culture was not confined to literature or elite institutions, but encompassed everyday life, the social practices, language, community memory, and so on. Stuart Hall, of course, born in Kingston, extended cultural studies in the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies at Birmingham University into questions of race, into questions of colonialism, media representation, diaspora, and identity formation. Most importantly for post-colonial societies, Hall illustrated how colonial discourse shapes blackness, national identity, historical memory, and ideas of civilization and modernity. Hall's interventions are emancipatory because they expose racism as ideological rather than natural. Reveal how representation sustains power. And provide conceptual tools for decolonization. As a Caribbean intellectual situated in Britain, Hall also theorized diaspora as a condition of fractured belonging shaped by empire and migration. With the task of emancipation yet incomplete in this context, this here Caribbean Jamaican context, cultural studies offers an emancipatory politics like no other discipline for me, in my experience. The emancipatory politics of cultural studies emerge from its commitment to exposing and transforming systems of domination. And so it's not uncommon for us to understand cultural studies disrupting assumptions by centering subaltern voices, oral traditions, vernacular knowledge, and Black Atlantic histories. This intellectual shift in and of itself is emancipatory because it restores historical agency to formerly colonized peoples. And I must also indicate at this time that when we talk about the post-colonial Caribbean, we must also remember that there is a colonial Caribbean. There are countries, overseas departments, and so on, still connected in this 2026 to these former colonial powers. So we can argue cultural studies in this context, knowing fully well Hall as a founding father, what his contribution has been. Cultural studies then is also about a question of reparatory justice. The question of reparatory justice is central to the role that cultural studies must play in the Caribbean today. It's not an accident that somebody with a cultural studies degree is now the director of the Center for Reparation Research. Reparatory justice, in terms of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, articulating demands for things like a formal apology or formal apologies, educational reform, public health initiatives, and so on, debt cancellation, these are definitely part and parcel of what this kind of activism in cultural studies must do. Reparations are cultural as well as economic. So, what are some of the areas that we could see cultural studies working in the context of a decolonizing practice, a public pedagogy, a sort of critical methodology for social transformation? Some of these areas include decolonizing curricula, critiquing representation. One of the decisions I've made, for example, is to stop watching certain kinds of content on television. Nothing presenting the terrorist as someone from the so-called Middle East. Nothing presenting or overly emphasizing things like, institutions of security and surveillance in the countries of the North. We have to make decisions about what we imbibe. And your algorithms are certainly going to work for you. If you do not know this, please take note. Preserving cultural memory and, of course, supporting historical redress, those are things that cultural studies must do. I have already invoked Stuart Hall as a founding father. Now I want to go a little deeper. I first heard Stuart Hall in 2000 at the University of Birmingham speaking on cultural studies, but he said something profound for me in his talk at the International Crossroads in Cultural Studies Conference, the largest conference in the discipline. He highlighted that for Black people, the body was all we had, a canvas of representation. Inspired by this, I have invoked this perspective on popular cultural traditions in the African diaspora in my published work on Jamaican dancehall, and I highlight it today to make a larger point. What is this point? It's a really obvious point, but I have never said it, and I'm up here and I'm going to read your responses to this point. One important dimension of Hall's point about the Black body is that culture as an archive, as a lived experience, underscores inseparability of the mind and body. Let me repeat that. One important dimension of Hall's point about the black body is that culture as an archive, as a lived experience, underscores inseparability of the mind and body. This is a crucial part of the unlearning and relearning necessary to complete the emancipation process, which Erna Brodba and Rex Nettleford have reminded is yet incomplete. The body as home to spirit, mind, and soul has been disaggregated by Chevans, but more profoundly by our musical giants who have given us the archive of roots and culture. An archive living in the body, from blood to hair follicles, skin cells, and sweat ducts to earwax. Perhaps the two most important words given to us as memory by the corpus of musical offerings from Jamaica to the African diaspora would be roots and culture. We always are hearing these musicians talk about roots and culture. Rastas, roots and culture. Roots and culture. The substance of who we are as people in this part of the world. Roots and culture. No separation of mind and body where roots and culture are concerned. Look at the body in response to music. It is a form of freedom called dance, which for some is involuntary. And my own expression of this is to speak of dance as my spirit language. Now I want to share just two cases. This thing is coming back with us. Slide number 7, where are we? Yes. I want to talk about unequal rights and justice. And to give us, in connecting Hickling's psychohistoriographic work to some of the contemporary work we're doing in the Center for Reparation Research, to assemble a body of work definitely on the colonial laws and the laws, the body of that legal architecture that still circumscribes black life in this part of the world. There is a legal architecture and there is a lot of work that we must do in the name of decolonization. Analysis of colonial laws, including slave laws, provides another layer of the anatomy of systemic oppression, buttressed by the whims and fancy of elite landowning ruling class. There is an anatomy of a social control framework that we can identify. And there are sort of two cases I want to use. I want to talk a little bit about education, and I want to talk about this legal architecture. So slave laws in the British West Indies from about 1600 to 1860 tell us quite a lot about the ways in which we must, in fact, insist on decolonization. And we can see some categories there: legal rights and injustice, religion and culture, laws, segments of the colonial plan, in fact, the laws around sexuality and bodily autonomy, social and economic management. And across the Caribbean, from Barbados, Jamaica, the Leeward Islands, including Antigua and so on, British Caribbean, the whole British Caribbean, Trinidad, some enacted for the entire British Empire, Barbados again. There are laws, the Barbados Slave Code, of course, 1661, very important if you don't know about it, defined enslaved Africans as property, legalized corporal punishment and restricted movement and assembly. This is the first comprehensive slave code in the English Caribbean, model for other colonies. The early Jamaican Slave Act, 1664, modeled, adapted the Barbadian model. The Consolidated Slave Act, strengthened plan. Hear my historian over there. In church, what is the word? Cantata? strengthening the planter control and growing enslaved population. 1696, Leeward Islands extended regional consolidation of plantation governance. Series of slave laws, 1702 to 1720s. This is a response now to Maroon resistance and frontier warfare. A series of laws enacted in that time. 1923, again, Slave Act of 1973, institutionalized plantation order during the sugar boom. 1733, Act for Better Order and Government of Slaves. This was the reaction to revolts and fears of insurrection. 1740, Jamaica became one of the most influential slave laws in the British Caribbean. It's a comprehensive legal regime, including punishment, policing, limited protections, and it criminalized resistance. And we could go on and on and on, this going all the way up to 1816, Barbados, the post-Bossa rebellion laws, reaction to major uprising in Barbados. The Amelioration Acts of 1823 across the British Caribbean, a response to abolitionist pressure, largely ineffective in practice, but of course on paper sounding quite lofty and glorious. Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, coming into full emancipation 1838. Still in the 1840s we were seeing vagrancy and labor laws. So these kinds of ways, certainly mechanisms in the anatomy and framework of control, persisting into the 1840s to the 1860s, vagrancy being used, for example, as one of the ways in which we could just carry people off the street, and certainly trying to not have people assemble, no loitering and so on. Not to mention the medical laws, and of course, Dave Goss's fabulous book, on bedwood gives us a deep-rooted introduction into the ways in which these laws were used to criminalize blacks. So there are patterns that we can identify across these laws, and I've done a bit of mapping there, certainly from the categories you would have seen. I'm not very good at using PowerPoint when I'm talking, unless I'm only talking from PowerPoint. But of course, we can see noise management, religious restrictions, all of them culturally racial, all across those years, still a legal framework that's circumscribing black life. I don't know why this thing is, because I'm pressing the wrong thing? No. All right, anyway. There are key patterns across these laws. They are defining Africans as property. They're instituting corporal punishment, mutilation, execution, legal tools of control. These major uprisings like the Taki Rebellion, Bossa Rebellion provided more restrictive laws, increased militarization of colonial society. And you might be wondering, why is this cultural studies scholar interested in this history? Is somebody wondering? Anybody wondering? Nobody wondering. Because guess what? When I started my PhD, I became a student of history. For the first time, and I'm now an advocate of the study of history, for the first time, I needed to teach myself the history I needed to know in order to understand Jamaican dancehall and where it was coming from and where it was rooted. You can't become a sovereign learner without knowing where the sitting where you study come from. You have to be a student of history. You have to be a student of history. There is something called intellectual genealogy. So even for something you are researching, go look at the history of that thing. There's a concept, go look, go find it. I remember spending 2 weeks to research the term Fassi. It's the longest footnote in my PhD thesis. 2 whole paragraphs taking me back to Ghana. You wouldn't believe it. Yep. Intellectual genealogy. So there is no confusion then in trying to map how it is cultural studies as an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary discipline would be interested in any combination of disciplines to make visible what is invisible. Its emancipatory framework or raison d'etre becomes the reason for engaging with whatever is needed to make visible that which is invisible. So if we do a comparative analysis, racial hierarchy is instituted in these laws. Surveillance, resistance and repression of certainly any kind of protest or rebellious action. There is reform, but I argue very much today that reform is inadequate. When Bob Marley says total destruction, the only solution, it is not that he's trying to be violent. He's trying to remind us that the systems that were crafted were never meant for us. And education is one such system. I want to play something which is very interesting. And I'm going to try to do that. But this is not connected to any. There is a... What platform should I send this to you on, Tricia? For you to be able to see this. It's a Rasta man talking about education. Have you all seen this social media post going around on Instagram? I want you all to hear it. There's a disclaimer that I must use because he is using a bit of expletives, so disclaimer, strong language. But I want you all to hear it. You know, so I can just play it and put my phone to the microphone, don't it? Or that me I gotta do. That's what I'm going to do.
Reason why they make us wear school uniform when we are going to school.
Have you thought about the reason why they make us wear school uniform? Look how the girls them just and look how the boys them just.
Because when it's forward to school, no fun is still not see the big picture. The main reason why we go to school. We go to school for them educate we for become a worker within the system. And look, listen to the reason here and see if it make no sense to you. Yo, because you see the school uniform, just look on the attire of the school youth them and just compare them to certain workplace where people have to dress a certain way. Whether you're a security guard, whether you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're this, you're that. You know what I say? Yeah, you're a warder, you're a porter. You know, just check the attire of these ones who are working at these areas. And say if you see a slight comparison compared to when you go to school. Back in the days, and you have to wear school uniform. And the thing is, when they leave school, you know, the first agenda, the first thing you have on your agenda, I forget a job. Me wrong or me right? A job. Everybody I say, yo, you're not gonna look at work where you yourself could hype up to get a job. And yet still, who know what kind of job you're gonna end up get? And if you end up get a job where you have to go just a certain way where you have to go wear uniform again, you would not go look on it now the mindset for you say, yo, but me just leave school one day and say me done with school uniform and now me I go work at a place and me have to wear a uniform. You know what about your mind mostly? Month end or fortnight or weekend, the paycheck. I just let's say you're focused there, you know. You would not think nothing otherwise, you know, than to end up start work and forget the pay. And education where we got school can receive. Where we use it for do? want to tell me what we use it for do? The education, where we left school and say we are work. Now majority of we end up in some work right now where we not use the education. All of this subject when enough people leave school with, and then a certain work era, them not use these subjects. What the meaning of these subjects? Why you have to study these subjects? Why you have to pay for all these subjects? You know what I say? And you still when you get to work, you not use these subjects. When you see a program, when you see the program all now, let me explain some more. Because probably not fun when you see the program all now. Because the program is the school system educate we for become a worker. So when we leave school, we can't use the education we leave school with for do nothing else more than for get a job with. And when we get a job with this education, only the requirements needed the education. Like in a sense, them have to sure, them have to know say how you can read, them have to know certain things, boy, by filling out these application forms. So, Carly said, for most of us, at this, the education done. By filling out these forms. You know what I say? We now use the education in our day-to-day living. So why is it so important for our school to get an education? What the purpose of education? As something we can use to maneuver through liberty. Like, for instance, you're a farmer. How your education help you? You know what I say? If you can read the product them and these things and know, so they say it done. So you see the main reason for education. If you just can identify, say you can read. You know what I say? You don't illiterate. That's the only purpose of education. What I'm telling the man them work on rubbish truck. How them use education? If you don't say, yo, them a go on this route and them a go study for live up garbage.
He goes on. This thing troubled me today. And I'm a researcher, so I'm going to read the comments on the post. And of course, there were persons who agreed with him because what he's saying can resonate with us, even as educators, some of us. And then there are others who said, oh, no, you're a madman, you don't understand. Education is a social good, it's something good. If you go to school, you're going to learn, it's not a program. What do you mean? So they are not looking in a deeper way at what he's saying. And yes, there is no day that we would not advocate for education, but what kind of education? This is where I'm going. While we have progressed beyond the limitations of no education, we must move to right the wrongs of our education system that keep us locked into imbibing knowledge about our oppressors and of ourselves as inferior. The Caribbean experience is marked not only by histories of enslavement, colonial domination, and psychic fragmentation, but also by continuous traditions of resistance and self-reclamation. Part of the self-reclamation we must do is to take the approach of not reforming education, not reforming what is this education system that was never built for us, but re-engineering. A word I prefer to use, re-engineering what is there for us. And this is not a statement about all of it being bad. This is a statement about the fact that the transformation in education that we have been looking for, that we've been waiting for, that we have paid taxpayers' money for, has not been realized. Has not been realized. And if when I say to you that cultural studies, doing a PhD in cultural studies brought me to history, that should really shame anybody who is a historian or interested in advancing any kind of history education. Why would I have to wait to be doing, as a matter of fact, one of the things I said in my professorial inaugural lecture last year, you shouldn't have to wait to come to a tertiary institution to learn about yourself. That's the education that's out there. One that alienates students from themselves, one where they can't see themselves in the history they are being taught, one that pushes them to swat and to regurgitate still, even when critical thinking is what is said is being encouraged. Something is wrong if all we are doing is producing service economies in the Caribbean. How is that transformation from the days of enslavement and colonialism different to today? I talk about a superficial transformation. The transformation that I can see is superficial. We are not walking around in chains, and we are not being told necessarily, how to dress, or, depending on the workplace you are in. But there's a superficial transformation. And it is only an education system that can show us to ourselves that will matter, ultimately, for the transformation of our people. Otherwise, we are producing people, he just said it, to send people to work for other people. So I wanted to give us some paths to understanding this reclamation of the body, this reclaiming the mind, decolonizing consciousness, and so on. We must engage with those thinkers who have tried to put us on the path of decolonization. It is not something that is rudimentary. It is ultimately and fundamentally necessary. It is to begin to trust ourselves. It is to begin to accept our ancestry. It is to begin to internalize not superiority, but certainly not inferiority. We don't need to present ourselves as being superior. This is not about a one-upmanship or any navel-gazing. This is about social transformation. Liberation, therefore, requires psychological decolonization. Freddie Hickling has put us on a great path with that. Recovery of historical agency and affirmation of Black humanity. There are ways in which we can see reggae, for example, as intellectual and spiritual liberation, doing the work of trying to make sure that we understand ourselves as a people with a history and pride, as a people with anti-colonial consciousness that can help to transform our societies, with repatriation of our own selves. We can move as we need to other countries that give us an understanding of African pride. We can know our history. We can reject mental captivity, and we can certainly reclaim African dignity. We also must reclaim language. We must stop talking about Jamaican Creole and what I call Jamaican as inferior languages. We don't even need to use the term patois. It's Jamaican. In Finland, where Finnish is of no use to anybody across that border, Finnish is taught in schools. Don't tell me foolishness about the fact that, Jamaican is not a language of business or of education. What is that? How are people going to be rooted in their identity if they can't even dream in Jamaican? That's what I'm talking about. That a certain understanding of the self means that the vulnerability we can see with people walking the streets of this country, in the social pathologies, some of which I identified, those will be stripped away when at the level of your dream, you're comfortable with who you are. The oneric, that dream space of the oneric, is very important. It tells us a lot. So we must not just placate a Louise Bennett Coverley or a Bob Marley or a Linton Kwesi Johnson. Those are people who have rooted us in an understanding of the power of this language of resistance. We must also reclaim the spirit. Colonial Christianity very much arm in arm with the state. The Pope and the King agreed to slavery. They have condemned, those institutions have condemned African-derived spiritual systems. But of course, Noel Erskine and others have documented that at emancipation, it was clear that the Africans were not abandoning their Mayalism or their African traditions. So African cosmologies, Kumina, Revivalism, Obia, Voodoo, Santeria, all across this Black Atlantic have survived through these oppressive institutions. We must reclaim these spiritual traditions, these African retentions, and not become afraid of ourselves. This is part of my challenge. We remain afraid of ourselves. I see Devon smiling. We remain afraid of ourselves. Nobody's telling you that you need to go out there and perform any African rituals. Nobody's asking you to be a Babalawo or a Sangoma or any of these things or a Spiritismo. No. But not be afraid of yourself. Do not be afraid of learning. Rastafari as spiritual emancipation. This is where we can take some example to reject colonial theology, to promote a certain kind of levity, natural embodiment, and all of those things. You see them coming back now, people promoting veganism, promoting all of these ital chic, naturally. Yes, the Rastas were the dirty foot Rastas were telling us all along. But we were only capable of accessing their music on the airwaves in our radio at home. But we didn't want them to cross the front door, the threshold. And it's very important that we reclaim the body and not constitute in this Cartesian sort of way that there is some separation between mind and body. There is no separation. Rastafari transformed blackness from stigma into sacred identity. We must claim Rastafari as well. We must reclaim our language. No, I'm going backwards. And there is a slide. Carnival, reclaiming the body. Carnival and physical liberation. Perhaps the most visible form of Caribbean bodily emancipation occurs through carnival and performance traditions. Enslaved Africans had masking traditions, the canboulay processions, the stick fighting rituals, the emancipation celebrations. And these, of course, right across the Black Atlantic. The carnivals have been Brazil, New Orleans, New York, London, and so on. The body under enslavement was commodified, disciplined, surveilled, violated. We must not make those mistakes and not understand that carnivals and performance traditions, even spiritual traditions, allow the bodies to move freely. Public dancing becomes collective affirmation. Rhythm reorganizes social space. Costumes transform identity. And in fact, masking subverts hierarchy. The dancing body becomes evidence of survival. So I'm here to say, dance every day like no one's watching. And of course, ultimately, we are engaging in this physical release as collective catharsis, but rehumanizing in the way that Sylvia Winter's project of rehumanization is our ultimate goal. Winter's critique of colonial man helps explain carnivals and all of these performance traditions, their deeper importance. Colonial systems reduced black people to laboring bodies, biological beings, and economic instruments. But of course, we are creative bodies, sacred, expressive, joyful, and in fact, living in and through the collective. There are a number of things that we must reclaim: food, land, and natural living, community healing, and collective practices. Caribbean peoples must continue to reclaim the mind from colonial ideology, the spirit from colonial erasure, the body from historical discipline. Performance traditions such as carnival especially demonstrate the importance of physical release as post-colonial emancipation. Using the insights across the works of Hickling, Fanon, Winter, Hall, and so on, I've emphasized that Caribbean performance culture is not merely entertainment. It is a profound civilizational practice of survival, rehumanization, education, memory, and liberation. If we do nothing else, let us remember ourselves. Let us emancipate ourselves from mental enslavement. Them need for Lego we shot. Thank you.
No, you can't stop the applause yet. We can't stop the applause yet, and I know we are applauding where we are. Okay, I'm getting my instructions from the father of the department. Wow, what a powerful lecture. I hugged Professor Stanley Naya twice because she knows why. She said to me earlier, of course, you had to be here. And having heard what she had to say, I know why I had to be here. Wow. Emancipating the self from mental enslavement paths to reclaiming the mind and body in the Black Atlantic. This YouTube is going to be much researched, and we look forward to the manuscript because this is very important work. I'm not going to say much more because my heart full, but we have a microphone here for a couple questions or comments. We're going to keep it tight. We want to do it within 10 minutes, hopefully. Any questions or comments? Papa Joe.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I wanted to speak on an issue in education because there's a tremendous cultural issue in education in Jamaica. We allegedly teach in English and the students don't know what we're saying. And there's it's only a school now, it used to be a faculty of education here. And that school of education needs to engage how we're going to deal with this. I was shocked last year. There's a school in Kingston, took in 154 students in their grade 7 who would have gone through primary school. 3 of them were reading at the level that they could cope with grade 7. A quarter of them could not identify the 26 letters of the alphabet. The cynicism is that the Ministry of Education gives them a set of books for their subjects, and they're to study all these subjects using their books, and them can't read. What are we doing about it? It's not just the one school. There was a school in St. Elizabeth with the same statistics. And there are about 50 secondary schools that are taking in students who cannot read. Part of the problem we discovered is that they don't understand the foreign language in which they're being taught. And there's a set of people who feel that when you say you must teach in patois, they say, oh, you're trying to deprive students. No, you're trying to reach the students where they are and where they can understand. And in the same way that sometimes the court system gets an interpreter so that people can understand what the language of the court, which everybody needs an interpreter. It's the same way that in the classroom, you have to teach in the culture in which the students have come up. And this is why I say 50-something% of our secondary school students are being very badly treated because they're being asked to do something in a foreign language, and they do not have that ability yet. So I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I know an initiative has developed. But it is a cultural matter, and you have touched on it. We have to use the language that people speak.
I mean, Dave is giving me the microphone about this very upsetting issue. This is very upsetting for me, and I'm sure some of you have heard me speak about this publicly. And there are people who then respond. When I say English needs to be taught as a foreign language, not registered on any books to say that Jamaica is not an English-speaking country, but that we teach the students English as a foreign, like it's a foreign language, really. Some students do not go into the school system with English. Not only that, you know the worst part? We adults think that we are speaking standard English. Some of us, who don't hear the primary, the primary, the primary functional. Many persons in this country are not speaking standard English. Many. That's the worst part. And they are the people who will insist that Jamaicans should not be taught in school to help the majority of students who go into the school system disenfranchised. This is a very, very upsetting issue for me. And I'm an outlier because I happen to be one of the Jamaicans understanding this in fullness. Sylvia, the leader.
Professor Cohenberg.
Right, on this subject. 1655 to 2026. What is it, 370 years of indoctrination. I think the first thing that we need is a public education campaign, because people genuinely believe that Jamaican Creole, Patois, whatever you want to call it, is not language. People genuinely believe that it lacks rules. People genuinely believe that using it as the basis for education will hold back children. People genuinely believe that if we were to use Jamaican in the schools as the basis for teaching English, I'm not even advocating that Jamaican language become the primary language of education, God forbid, right? Even if we just advocate that it become the basis for teaching English, we are being told that we will be holding back children, that we will be disadvantaging them, that English is the only language that is actually useful, that Jamaican Creole is actually redundant, and so on and so forth. So the first thing we need is this big public education campaign to say, hello, this is language, fully functional in Jamaican society. And you cannot live in Jamaica and only speak English and think that you can go everywhere and achieve everything. That's impossible. Jamaican Creole is not redundant.
Good.
Thank you, Professor Cohenberg. Any follow on that? We have a comment from Kamau, then
Yes.
Bob, then Melissa.
So I'm just so pleased at what she's spoken about, because just in fact this Tuesday we had conversation in the ICS office among the staff about the fact that we do need to push back, and the pushback needs to come, I think, from the university, at least because of where we are, in terms of just that bit you played by the Rastaman who is talking about being prepared for work. And the fact that we're sitting in a place that we too are being subjected to this need to prepare students only for work, right? We had the discussion that, listen, there is more to life than work. We are not all units of labor. There is something that we exist for. We have a purpose. We have a history. There are deeper things that need to be considered. And even if you're trained in history or anything else, you as an individual, you're being prepared to think. And that is the most critical thing that we should be focused on. And so that we, as I know, right? But we as persons in the university really need to push back. And of course, we're in a context where, the neoliberalism and all of that thing that has also captured the university. And we have to speak to it. I'll end there.
Yeah, thank you.
Professor Kamel Roof.
Thank you very much, Professor Stanley Nayo. Amazing. Thank you for this lecture. I think I want to ask us a question, because as I look on the slide, we all know the issues. We all know the reports about the schools that are underperforming. We all watch the television and we see the violence that's happening in schools. We all know. And we all know that we work in a university that is supposed to be an activist university. We all know the people who make the policies and so on. So the question I have, how do we help us to understand ourselves so that we can then do the necessary work? And I would love for you to share some thoughts on that. Yes, but pushback is broad. I want some more specifics. How do we do this?
Carmel, very profound question. And I'm glad that you've asked that question, because like Michael Jackson says, the man in the mirror, the work has to begin with us. The work has to begin with the self. And this is why my lecture was pointing to ways in which not we collectively only, but we individually must reclaim these things. How else are we going to understand where it is we must go collectively if we're not understanding ourselves? And too many of us are afraid to do that. So when we are locked into moral orders that tell us we are inferior, moral orders that tell us the ways in which we think are inferior, moral orders that tell us the ways in which we conceptualize a spiritual being or spiritual source in the universe are inferior, you have to do that work internally. And that's why when I speak now, I always have to pay homage to Rasta. Because it is the memory, that body of people who said, to hell with you. I am going to find my own spiritual source. I am going to find my own way of living. I am going to take myself out of society, out of the system that is broken. We must honor them because they pointed us in the direction of where we must go. I'm not saying that we must end there. I'm saying it's a start, and we must honor them for starting us on that journey of reflection. We have to do that work internally. Rastas are people in the society who can identify, even if the person is only wearing locks, it is a sign that, or natural hair, it's a sign that they have made some decisions about who they are as a person.
Yes.
We have to do that work internally. That's the only way I can answer.
I want to just jump in quickly to say to you that today I had a conversation with a Spanish teacher, my friend, and she said to me, Melissa, you think you have problem at teach the Pitney them history? Imagine trying to teach Spanish to Pitney where they don't even know English in the first place. That's what she said to me. She said it cannot be done because they don't know English. So you cannot teach them Spanish. And it was so profound to me, and I want to take the conversation beyond just the language and the reclamation of the language. There is a serious attack right now against the humanities, against the things that make us the people who we are. There's an attack because the thrust of the Ministry of Education is to run headlong into everything named technology and AI and whatnot, where we pick up all over the world, and plug it into education and fling it there. How are children going to write programs if they can't read? Right? If they're not literate. And when you see the things that are coming, all the conferences, education, this and that, all about the place, these are the things. There's an attack. And it has to be that education policy changes. We could have 1 million public education campaigns, I think, for us to know. We look at the number of people sitting in this room. Look at the numbers of people speaking to ourselves. We same one who know the things that we're saying already. Education policy must change. And that is what we have to look at in order to get ourselves, in order to reclaim. And by the way, I want to get to the point where I'm dreaming in patois.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. And we do have, Melissa, remember we have a huge audience of persons in this room through the technology that we have, and who will be referencing this lecture in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful lecture it has been, and what a wonderful discussion. The lecture has become flesh already and is dwelling amongst us with an activist mandate being laid at our feet. Let us get the work done. So, see Dr. Gus, come stand up side of me now as the elder in the church.
No, I don't want to come and roll us out, okay? You know, your church, we kind of finish. But I don't want you to leave. I know some people have to leave, but I want you to leave. We have a little cake that we just want to cut symbolically, that represents the 39 years and what is to come. And I know that Deban has vote of thanks he's going to give us. But I want to do the cake thing first. And we do the cutting up, and then he can give his vote of thanks. I just want to invite Sorry. So we invite Candia, Dr. Candia Mitchell Hall, one of our, for what they call it, I'm looking at medium years lecture because personally I myself we're going through the door. So, sure, right, so one of our medium, younger lecturers to come and to present the ICS and the grandpapa. A grandpapa call it, no?
No, me never call him grandpapa. It's papa.
The papa. So where will you come? I have to cut. Let's cut a cake for us symbolically and the camera, and we're gonna probably say what we say. How we say? No, hippie bore. That's what we say. You lead that section. Happy birthday.
Oh,
happy
well, we
birthday.
have to sing the happy birthday song, Miss Lou style. 1, 2, 3, and happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, dear ICS, happy birthday. May God bless you, may Jah bless you. Happy birthday to you, dear. Yes, happy birthday. Hip hip. Hip hip. One more time, hip hip. Yes. The cake cooked already? No, we're supposed to go 1, 2, 3. No, come cut it again. Huh? You did it in your heart? Me never even see. Come, all of the ICS babies, come stand around. Yes, and the picture. So we're going to stage it now. We are cultural people. So let's go. After 3. Yeah, man, we're going. Yeah, nobody show which party cut already. So we're going like it never cut yet. After 3. 1, 2. I can't count, you know. I did English, not maths. 2.5, 2.75, 0.999, 3. I used to these cultural studies people, them are cut same way. We never reach 3 yet. Resistance, resistance, resistance. Oh boy, what a wonderful. We're going to take some pictures after we hear from our dear friend, soon to be, or we can call you doctor from now. You know, get the, all right. Soon to be Dr. Devon Panton is going to come and move the vote of thanks. And after that, we're going to gather around and take some nice birthday pictures because it's all of us birthday. Put your hands together for Devon, who has done some great work. Yes, ma'am.
No, I got a letter from the library. Yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, good evening. I must declare up front that I have neither the appeal or the vocal resonance of our moderator. So, as you say in Jamaica, you do whatever you can with the little that you have, right? So that's what I've been doing. So, okay. Ask you for 30 seconds just to say how I came to be a part of this program. I was, at the time, it took place in 2017. I served on the board of directors for JCAP. Yes, I may not look it, but I'm a bit of a musician, all right? The guitar is my passion. And I was introduced to then Dr. Sonia Stanley Naya by the general manager for JCAP at a 2-day workshop. On day 1, she introduced me on day 1. She's Lydia Rose. And on day 2, I don't remember how the discussion came to it, but I think I told then Dr. Naya, now professor, that I did an essay to be printed in the annual Charlestown International Maroon Conference magazine. And I gave it to her on the 2nd day. This was sometime in the month of May, I think, in 2017. Now, fast forward to August, end of August, early September. I got a call. I was at home doing some work. I got a call, and this voice said, hello? And I said, hello, can I help you? And she said, this is Sonia Stanley Naya. Do you remember me? I said, yes, Dr. Naya, I remember you. What can I do for you? How can I help? And she, in her same sweet voice, she said, you can help by joining the PhD program at UA. So, Dr. Naya, you are my reason for being here. I don't know if that is good, but I am here because of you. You don't remember that, do you? She called me at home and said, find your tail to you. She never said it that way. Find your tail up at you and apply. Now, when I came here, I learned, but at the time I said to myself, I had an MBA in finance, financial management, IT, etc. How difficult can that be? I mean, it's cultural studies, right? I mean, I can breeze through, but when I came here, I learned immediately that that's not so. One of the things I had to deal with as a computer programmer, I started out in programming. You do your test. Is the answer 1? Yes. You branch to the right. Is the answer 1? No. You branch to the left. Now imagine coming here and having to face something that, I can give an example. Let us look at the color red. In one tradition, red means the blood of Christ. In another tradition, red means danger. In another tradition, it means power and strength and marriage. Now, as a programmer at the time, I had to recast my mind. It took me a while to actually come to terms with that, all right? That was how I came here. Now, very powerful presentation, Professor. I really love it. I can't wait to get the transcript. I'm going to be very honest with you. In fact, I think I may take away the one you have there, you know? Now, warrior spirits always excites me. I'm not an Obe man. Obe is good, by the way. Warrior spirits excite me. My research involves dealing with healers. I am from a family of healers myself. And so this is very deep, very, very, very close to my heart. We spoke about, someone spoke about, I think Professor mentioned Kumina, revivalism, and the Maroons. I am from the Maroons too. That is why. That is why I'm like this, all right? A lot of things to touch on from the professors. They spoke of Professor Hall. The thing with Professor Hall is, and that is one of my mentors, I never met him, quite unfortunately. He was speaking from a place of deep experience. He was the darkest in his family. His very own sister, same mother, same father, kept telling me he was too black. His mother did not allow him to bring friends from JC to the home. All right, so when he went to UK, he was trying to get away from that too. All right, it influenced his work. The mind-body disconnect resonated with me, where the body responds to the music, but the mind is fighting it. All right, I'm trying my best to touch on that. But anyway, on behalf of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, the Institute of Caribbean Studies and Center for Reparation Research, and on my own behalf, I will have to say a very hearty thank you to Professor Sonia Stanley-Nair, to Papa Dave Goose Goss. The Goose is his pet name. That's another story. We can get into that another time. That's another story. And our astute moderator, Mr. Hugh Dawes, the man with the appeal and the voice. Dr. Dion Edwards, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, and Mr. Joseph Pereira, former Director of ICS, Mr. Robert Hall, Cultural Studies, myself, yours truly, Miss Janelle Jones, Mr. Kamal Amen. These are all, added to the value of the experience here. Professor Stanley-Nair, I have to mention you again. You're a special guest. So once again, I thank you for that high power, very thought-provoking presentation. I also wish to thank you all for attending, both here in attendance and in cyberspace, and assisting in continuing the remarkable success that this series of lectures has put together over the years. Finally, in bringing this lecture to an end, I now ask us all, including those in cyberspace, to lend a round of applause to Professor Stanley-Nair and Dr. Dave Goss, and those members of staff who also assisted in putting this together. All right? Thank you so much.
And we thank you so much, Devon, for moving that vote of thanks. As we go, I want to thank you all for attending. Thank you all those who joined us online, and to also ask you to recommend this lecture to the persons you know who are involved in policy, in education, and in all the other ways of activism, including our ordinary citizens of the Caribbean, who could learn much and do much from the activism laid before us this afternoon by Professor Stanley Nye. I want to also remind us that this is in the tradition of Stuart Hall, who says of popular culture, which was heavily quoted by Prof, that it is the arena of consent and resistance. It is partly where hegemony arises and where it is secured. Happy 39th anniversary, and here's to 39 plus more. God bless you all.
We just want to take a picture of especially our students, our grad students, and the lecturers who are here. So we want a picture moment right here. I'm going to ask you as you leave if you could get take a slice of cake on our behalf, please. All right? On our behalf. But we want to take a picture and to remember this particular moment, especially around Professor Naya, who was one of our outstanding leaders in the department. She'll be the center, and we'll gather around, all right, and take a picture. So come, please, staff members and students, let's come on the stage, and we'll take a picture.